In this General Motors Norwood assembly plant, Chevrolet Impalas and Chevrolet Corvairs were produced in the 1960s. Before automation, people were an important part of making cars. They were proud of their work and proud of every car they built. Right now, you're watching American workers manually assembling engines inside this Chevrolet factory. In 1963, 1 out of every 10 cars sold in the United States was a Chevrolet. During the 1960s and early 1970s, the regular Chevrolet, especially the fancy Impala, became one of the best-selling cars in U.S. history. Located in Norwood, Ohio, this Norwood assembly plant built General Motors cars between the years of 1923 and 1987. When it first opened, the plant employed 600 workers and was capable of producing 200 cars per day. At its peak in the early 1970s, it employed nearly 9,000. It built over 8 million cars during its lifetime. These Chevrolets had 13,000 parts. Today, cars have more than 35,000 parts on average. This shows how cars have become much more complex over time. This machine automatically measured dimensions with an accuracy of up to 10,000ths of an inch. To test its efficiency, parts that were intentionally undersized were also fed into the system. It's a clear example of how far automobile factories have advanced. In the 1960s, Norwood was instrumental in producing some of Chevrolet's most iconic models, including the Impala, Nova, and the Camaro. When this film was made, Chevrolet was building over 1.7 million cars every year, offering buyers a huge variety of colors and trims to choose from. Back then, General Motors was the biggest car company in the world. It wasn't just one brand, it included Buick, Cadillac, Pontiac, and Oldsmobile, each with its own style and fans. The Chevrolet Corvair represented GM's bold, unconventional entry into the compact rear-engine market to rival the Volkswagen Beetle. The current process you are viewing is the joining of the Chevrolet Caprice body with the chassis frame. In 1967, General Motors produced its 100 millionth vehicle, and it was this blue Chevrolet Caprice Custom Coupe. In the mid-1960s, the new Chevrolet Impala sold for $2,500. These General Motors factory assembly line workers earned salaries that were considered solid middle-class wages, around $2.50 to $3.50 per hour, roughly $5,000 to $7,000 per year, depending on hours worked, overtime, and seniority. Many GM workers could afford a home, car, and support a family on a single income, largely due to strong union agreements that secured good wages, benefits, and job security. Jobs were physically demanding and repetitive, but provided stability and upward mobility. Right now, you are watching the waterproof testing of the interior of a 1960 Chevrolet Impala. The quality inspector must ensure that not a single drop of water gets inside the interior. General Motors is an American car company that still sells the most cars in the United States. It has been the biggest car maker in the U.S. for many years, and for 77 years it was also the biggest in the world, until Toyota took the top spot in 2008. Last year, 16 million cars were sold in the U.S., and 17% of them were made in General Motors factories. This dealer also always checked the quality of the car offered, and always polished and scented the car after delivery to the dealership. In just 1 year, 1960, an incredible 600,000 Chevrolet cars were produced. The Chevrolet Impala, Camaro, and Chevelle cars were absolute luxury on American roads in 1968. During the development of Chevrolet in the 1960s, resistance to various extreme temperatures was also tested. Right now, you're watching testing inside a special chamber for extreme heat and cold. Chevrolet subjected prototype vehicles to extreme climate testing, using specially designed environmental chambers that simulated both scorching heat and freezing cold. These tests were essential for evaluating how engines, transmissions, and materials performed under thermal stress. Engineers monitored everything from engine starts in sub-zero temperatures to cabin comfort during simulated desert heat. Test vehicles were driven for thousands of miles on rough roads, mountainous terrain, and high-speed tracks. The goal was to identify weaknesses in suspension, drivetrain, and chassis components. Cars were pushed beyond typical driving limits to simulate years of wear in just a few months. Although crash testing was less advanced than today's standards, Chevrolet still conducted basic impact tests and brake evaluations. Right now, you're watching how the front winching system was also tested, including its strength. It was easily capable of lifting the entire vehicle into the air. Right now, you are looking at a Chevrolet El Camino. In 1959, only 22,000 of them were produced. Today, its low production and bold styling make it highly collectible. Values range from $10,000 to $19,000 for decent driver-quality cars. In the wider context, Chevrolet dominated market share, with GM controlling about 44% of U.S. automotive sales in 1960. The Corvair entered a crowded economy car market. Frontline competitors included the Ford Falcon, Rambler American, and Plymouth Valiant. These rivals typically offered simpler front-engine layouts and strong reliability, while the Corvair's rear-engine design was more unconventional. Right now, you're watching the production of a rare Corvette ZR1. In 1992, only 502 units of this model were built at this factory in Kentucky. Total Corvette production in 1992 was 20,000 vehicles. The ZR1 option alone cost an extra $31,683, nearly doubling the price of a base coupe. Highly praised as King of the Hill, the ZR1 delivered supercar caliber speed and dynamics at a more approachable price. 1992 model updates included bronze-tinted rectangular dual exhaust outlets, ZR1 fender badges, and revised interior instrumentation with black faceplates and repositioned digital speedometer. Right now, you're watching the beginning of the production process in American factories, where Chevrolets were made in 1955. In 1955, Chevrolet dramatically refreshed its full-size car lineup, introducing the celebrated Tri-5 series, the 150, 210, and Bel Air, along with a range of body styles spanning basic commuter cars to upscale sporty wagons and the iconic Corvette. In this year, Chevrolet cars were built at multiple GM assembly plants across the United States, not just in one factory. In total, Chevrolet had over 10 active assembly plants building cars in 1955. This widespread network allowed GM to sell cars nationally with reduced shipping costs. Chevrolet sold over 1.7 million cars in 1955. It outsold Ford by about 250,000 units, reclaiming market dominance. The 1955 Chevrolets had all new styling, lower, longer, and sleeker than 1954 models. Features included wraparound windshields, flatter hoods, and cleaner lines. Designers called it the Hot One in advertising. 1955 Chevrolets could be ordered with Power Glide automatic transmission, air conditioning, rare but available, power steering, and power brakes. Collectors consider the 1955 to 57 Chevrolets as one of the most iconic eras in American car history. The 1955 models kicked it off by blending style, performance, and affordability in a way no rival matched. Flint Factory in Michigan was one of the original GM plants and a key site for Chevrolet passenger cars. Janesville Car Factory in Wisconsin was a long-running GM plant that in 1955 produced full-size Chevrolets. Norwood Assembly Plant in Ohio built full-size Chevrolets and later became famous for producing Camaros. St. Louis Chevrolet Factory in Missouri was the main plant for Corvette production, with its fiberglass body. Tarrytown Plant in New York produced sedans and wagons for the East Coast market. Atlanta Manufacturing Plant in Georgia built Chevrolets for the Southeast region. Kansas City Factory in Missouri was another important assembly site for the Tri-5 models. Oakland Car Plant in California supplied the West Coast with Chevrolets. Los Angeles production site in California produced both passenger cars and trucks. By the mid-1950s, the U.S. was the largest car market in the world, producing over 7 million cars annually. The market was dominated by the Big Three: General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, which together accounted for roughly 95% of U.S. car sales. Independent brands like Studebaker, Packard, Hudson, and Nash still existed, but they were losing ground rapidly. General Motors was the largest automaker in the world, controlling about 50% of the United States car market. Chevrolet was GM's volume brand and competed head-to-head with Ford for the top sales spot. In those times, automation was increasing, but most labor was still human-intensive, with skilled tradesmen in stamping, welding, and paint. Styling changes every year forced automakers to retool factories annually, which was expensive, but kept customers coming back for the newest look. General Motors and Ford could afford this constant change. Independents often could not, which partly explains their decline. Toyota was still a tiny local automaker in Japan in 1955. Their main new product was the Toyota Crown, introduced in 1955 as their first true passenger car designed for the Japanese market. Annual Toyota production was in the tens of thousands, not millions. For context, Toyota built about 22,000 vehicles in 1955, while Chevrolet built nearly 80 times more cars that same year. Toyota had no presence in the U.S. market yet. Its first exports to the U.S. came in 1958, and they were largely unsuccessful due to being underpowered for American highways. The real Chevrolet versus Toyota competition wouldn't begin until the 1960s to 70s, when Toyota started exporting in larger numbers, Corolla, Corona, and challenging Detroit's dominance during the oil crisis era. Right now, you can see how individual body panels are stamped from steel rolls. They will be welded together in the body shop. These stamping machines are still used today, although they are built completely differently. Their basic principle of stamping body parts remains very similar. The 1950s were a pivotal decade for American manufacturing, marked by rapid industrial growth and technological advancements following World War II. The The manufacturing sector was a key driver of the U.S. economy, producing everything from automobiles and appliances to electronics and machinery. Mass production techniques perfected in earlier decades dominated manufacturing in the 1950s. The assembly line, popularized by Henry Ford in the early 20th century, was widely used to produce cars, household goods, and consumer electronics at a large scale. Now you can see for yourself how the painted body is lowered onto the prepared chassis with engine and wheels. This process is very similar in today's modern car factories as well. The 1950s introduced new materials such as plastics and aluminum, which became popular due to their lightweight and versatile properties. These innovations influenced product design, making goods more affordable and accessible to the average American. Now, on this assembly line, the wiring is installed and the interior and exterior components of the car are assembled. This quality inspector checks the finished Chevrolet and then places a sticker on the windshield indicating that the car has passed inspection. After completion, the cars were parked next to the production hall and then transported by trucks to dealerships. The trucks could carry only 4 cars at a time, so even this capacity is higher today. The assembly line was highly refined by the mid-1950s. Plants were regionalized, meaning Chevrolet cars were built in over 10 different factories across the U.S. to cut shipping costs. In 1955, Chevrolet cars were built in multiple GM plants across the U.S., from Michigan to California. The year was historic for introducing the small block V8, setting sales records and redefining Chevrolet's image as a stylish, performance-oriented brand.